Hey, what's going on? And as you can see by the title, I'm going to be doing a book review called Mrs. Wiggins by the author Mary Monroe. So if you're new to this channel, welcome to Chanel Book Reads. And so what I do here, basically, I love reviewing books, but I kind of do it in a different style and way. I like to do it in a format of kind of like storytelling. So just to put a disclaimer out here, I'm going to spoil this book from A, B, and C from beginning to end. So if you do not want to listen to a review where a person gives away the whole entire book, please click off of the video right now. So this is your final warning. But if you want to stick around and listen to a great story, you're more than welcome. So this book, oh my goodness, Mary Monroe is so amazing. She's such a wonderful author, and it's no brainer as to why she is a New York Times best-selling author. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this book. So this book deals with two childhood friends who have completely different backgrounds. We have Maggie. Now, Maggie had a very dysfunctional type of background, upbringing. Her mother was kind of a prostitute, if you will, very loose woman or whatnot. And then she also had a father who was an alcoholic. So she didn't have the very best upbringing, nor did her family have the best of reputation. But that's a little bit about her. But she also has little issues as well. She was violated, sexually molested, and different things like that. So she really didn't have the best experiences growing up. And so her best friend, Hubert, he kind of has a different upbringing. He has great parents. He comes from a wonderful background. His upbringing is just squeaky clean. It's pristine. He's a PK kid because his father is a preacher. And they have money. They're doing well in life. So they just have two different things. But his little issue is that he is gay, right? He is gay, and nobody knows that he is gay except for his best friend, Maggie. And so with them being childhood friends, they just were always there for each other, and he appreciated having Maggie as a best friend because at least he had someone that actually knew how he felt on the inside and what he was dealing with. So they just kind of stayed close. And so when they turned about 18, they decided, okay, you know, you rub my back, I'll rub yours. It was in it, something in it, excuse me, for both of them. They decided that, okay, well, it's not they. Hubert actually presented this idea to Maggie. He was like, well, I want to marry you so that way people won't be suspicious about me being gay and different things like that. I'll marry you, I'll take care of you, and we could just act like we're very much in love and just make a promise and a pact to just always be in each other's life. Let's just go ahead and do this. And so Maggie didn't feel anything about it because after all, she loves him, not like that, but she loves him as a friend and she trusts him. And then she really didn't like sex because of, you know, what she went through when she was younger. She was violated. Her body was violated. She really didn't like sex all that much because she didn't have great experiences. And then her family didn't have the best of reputation. So she feels like if I marry into a good family, this will kind of clean up my name and my family's reputation. So she was down with it, you know. She didn't mind marrying someone who she actually knew and cared about and loved. They were best friends. So she went along with it as well. But they both wanted kids. But he told her up front, like, look, I'm never going to have sex with you. And rightfully so, because he's gay. And she knew that. It's not like she was blindsided by anything. And she knew that they were never going to have sex, but they both wanted kids one day. So they go on and get married. And you know how, like, when you're married, you know, your parents and in-laws are like, okay, what are you guys gonna do? I've been married for some time now. I think they've been married for like maybe 2 to 5 years, and people was like, what's going on? And so the pressure started, being placed on them to, go ahead and have children. And of course, Hubert didn't want people catching on to him being gay, or let it on that he wasn't sleeping with his wife. So they decided to, okay, we got to do something because people are going to know that we're not being intimate. So let's just find someone who kind of looks like me, where no one will be suspicious who the baby looks like. Let's scout out someone, to have, a baby with. And so she was like, cool. So they decided to go on way over on another side of town to, follow through with their plans. So a couple of tries did not go so well. She met a lot of rude people. It just wasn't a good situation. They couldn't find a really good fit. And so she was thinking, like, with Hubert, because whenever she would go to these bars on the other end of town, I think they went to Mobile, this place called Mobile, and all of this setting is set in Alabama. So they went to another side of town where nobody would be there and catch them in what they're doing, their little plan or whatever. And so whenever she would go to the bar, she would have people be interested in her because she's a very good looking woman, young lady. So she had, some people who was checking her out or whatever, but they would always ease off when Hubert was with her. He always wanted to go with her. And so she finally decides that, you kind of messing up the groove of things. So why don't you just let me handle this? I'll go out on my own, because after all, he would go out to see his boyfriends every weekend. He would just go do his thing all the time. But he was kind of trying to be invested in being a part of choosing or selecting a guy, which it just wasn't really working. So he decides, okay, whatever. She goes by herself, and she gets lucky. One night she meets someone who looks a lot like Hubert. He was fine, he was attractive, and of course he was coming on to her or whatever. And this guy that she met, he actually wanted to sit there and have a conversation with her and talk to her and learn a lot about her. And she was kind of appreciative of that. She was like, okay, he's decent, so this is somebody I can go home with, do, and that'll be that. So they do that, but he was so respectful. He was family oriented, and he believed in family, and he had kids of his own, I do believe. I think he had, I don't know, maybe about 4 kids already, or maybe possibly 5. It didn't work out with all his other baby mamas, but that's neither here or there. So he knew a little bit about kids, and of course she knew that wasn't nothing wrong with his sperm and that he could actually have children. So she was like, well, that won't be no problem there. But he was actually a nice guy. So they do the do, and after they do the do, Randolph just fell in love with her really quick. Like, he caught feelings for her. He kept wanting to see her. And, she kind of liked him too, because he was different. And his sex wasn't all that bad. You know what I mean? And I think that if she would have continued seeing Randolph, that she would have probably actually enjoyed having sex. He really was into her. He really wanted to be with her. He wanted a relationship with her. He wanted things to just, go somewhere, possibly marriage one day. And so for her, she just had her head on straight, thinking like, no, I came here to get pregnant. And once I get pregnant, I'm out. I'm just going to go cold turkey on him or whatever. So once she knows that she is pregnant, she knew that she was going to have to just cut all ties with him and stop seeing him, which she didn't leave in the best of terms. She didn't even tell him nothing. She just abruptly left Randolph, and he's just left high and dry. Didn't really know what happened to their relationship or none of that. She didn't say any goodbyes, but I think something happened as time progressed where he went on to be in the service or something like that, and just kind of like dealt with the fact that he would never hear from her again. And so she's pregnant. Boom. She has a child. Of course, it's not Hubert's child, but somebody who looks like him. Randolph is the real father. But of course, they already know that. They have the child, and people was just gushing about how much Claude looked a lot like his father, Hubert, and everybody just loved him. And of course, he's the only child, so he's getting a lot of attention and affection and just love from both of the parents. And Maggie was very happy to have a child because that's what she always wanted. And she finally had someone who loved her for her and who had no judgment of her or nothing like that. She was really, really happy. And then not only that, now I told you her upbringing was kind of rough because her mother was a prostitute, but her mother actually ended up getting her life in order, and she stopped prostituting and she gave her life to the Lord, and she got into church. But her father was still an alcoholic, but at least things were kind of looking up in her mother's life. And so they were able to kind of have a little relationship or whatever. And I believe Clyde did meet his grandmother. I'm not sure, but I believe so. But when her mother died and her father died, that was a little bit hard, but she was thankful that she had her son or whatever in her life, and just someone to just love on and have love returned unto her. So of course, as time goes on, they're just living this happy, happy life. And Herbert is still going out every weekend, being with all types of men because Herbert is a very attractive man. So he had boyfriends that he would frequent all all weekend. He would just be out doing his thing. And so sometimes it would be lonely, but she was glad again to have her son. But now her son is of age to start dating. So I believe he's like 18. And he was a very good kid. He wasn't a problematic child. I just think that he was kind of sheltered and a little bit spoiled because he was the only child. And so, when you're a little bit sheltered, you don't really know a lot. But he was a good kid. He was a good kid. He started dating and he was seeing all different types of girls, but nothing too serious. And of course, Maggie was happy about that or whatnot. And so Maggie had befriended somebody in the neighborhood named, what was her name? Maggie had befriended this girl named Jessie. And so Jessie was a type of person who would gather all of the gossip that's going on around the town because Alabama is very, very small. So she knew everybody's business. And so they were really good friends, had been friends for years or whatever. And of course, one day, as she came over, because Jessie would come over, actually, Maggie was well respected. Everybody loved her cooking. She would always cook this amazing gumbo that people were so fond of. So everybody in the town would frequent her house whenever she would make gumbo. She could make that very, very well. And then she was just well known in the neighborhood. She looked out for, her neighbors and seniors, elderly people. She was just really hands-on with the community in her neighborhood. And so this one particular day when her and Jessie was, just talking, gossiping or whatever, Jessie mentions to her that, well, I'm sorry to hear about your son. And Maggie was like, sorry about what? And she said, well, you know that he's dating that floozy girl, that fast girl, Daisy. Now, Daisy is somebody who, I wouldn't say she's a prostitute, but she is a clout chaser. She is money hungry. Let me just put it like that. And she used men to get what she wants. And I believe she's like 29 or 30. And of course, at this time, her son is 21. Maggie's son is 21 years old at this point. So he's a young man. He's kind of like an adult. But yeah, Jesse was sitting there saying, yeah, your son is dating that girl Daisy. And she was like, what? I thought my son was dating so and so. That can't be right because he's dating that nice girl that goes to the church. So I know that can't be correct. She was like, yes, your son is messing with her. And so, of course, Maggie was like, let me find out if he's really messing with that floozy Daisy who is way older than him, 11 years older than him. Because I think, yeah, she was 32. And so, sure enough, she found out that her son was not only dating this girl, Daisy, but he was madly in love with Daisy to the point where he was spending more time with Daisy, hanging out with Daisy a little bit more and not being home as much. And Maggie didn't too much like that because she wasn't hearing from her son. And every time that Maggie would try to call to ask how her son was doing, Daisy would just have this attitude. She was basically kind of putting ideas in her son's head to be against her family because she wanted to control him and take money from him, just drain him and treat him bad and misuse him, and didn't want the family interfering. So she would put these thoughts into his head to try to manipulate him to be against his own family. And so after they couldn't take it no more, she decided, that's it, I'm gonna have to go over there and see what's going on. So she does, and Daisy is a piece of work. Daisy is the type of woman that you would probably want to go to jail back behind because she had a very rude, nasty, foul attitude. And she just was not polite. She was very callous, very rude, very, I don't know, she didn't have no good common sense. She was just, I don't know. And so they went by her house and she was just rude, saying that, if your son wanted to call you guys and be in you guys' life, then he would. Why you coming over here? He's with me, blase, blase. And the mother is just trying her hardest to be nice because she don't want any problems between her and her son. She don't want to make her son angry because she knows how her son feels about Daisy. So she's trying her hardest to play along to get along so that she can still keep tabs on her son, even though she wasn't hearing from him much. And so she's still trying to get in contact with her son. And then it just so happened one day when they were trying to go to her house to see about him, of course, Daisy was saying, he's not here, go away. And actually, he pulled up. Claude had pulled up. And it was like, oh, Claude, how are you doing? And he was happy to see him, but he was acting a little afraid because they had warned Clyde. Not only was Daisy a piece of work, but she would verbally and physically jump on her men when she didn't get her way. And so they tried to warn him, but he didn't really listen because he was head over heels in love with Daisy. So anyways, he was acting a little afraid and he was like, oh, it's so good to see you guys. Like, wow, it's been a minute and I'm sorry. And he was like, yeah, we tried to call you or whatever. And he didn't even know that his parents was trying to call him. So he tried to play it off like, oh, I guess her kids didn't, they forgot to tell me that you guys called or whatever. But he was like, it's good to see you guys. And hopefully, we can all get together, have some dinner or whatever. And of course, Daisy didn't want to hear any of that. She tried to make an excuse that they was going to be busy with something else. But anyways, they left. So, of course, Maggie is a little upset, but thank goodness that she had other things to occupy her time when she wasn't really spending as much time with her son and didn't really know how her son was doing. She had this amazing job working as a house cleaner with this woman named Mrs. Dowler. And so Miss Dowler, she's rich, Caucasian lady, doing well or whatnot. And she was a decent person. She wasn't really bad at all. She wasn't really racist because you have to keep in mind that this was back in the early 1900s. Yeah, 1900s. And this was during the time of the Great Depression. So racism was going around and different things as such. And they didn't treat colored folks too well, but Miss Dollar was she was different. She treated Maggie very well. She trusted her. She would tell her all types of stories, and she actually would tell her family about Maggie and how a wonderful, fine young woman she is. And she just really respected Maggie and really took a liking to Maggie, the way that she would clean, and she just really trusted Maggie. And so they grew like this friendship, and they talked about everything and confided in each other about everything. Well, of course, Miss Dollar did. Of course, there were some things that Maggie felt comfortable to share or whatever, but that kind of kept her busy from keeping her mind off of her son not being there. So she had an amazing job, and she had a great boss. Her boss would pay her double than what she was qualified to get paid for. She was just a great boss. So she really was blessed to have an amazing boss to work for. And so that's what would keep her busy or whatever. And so, but after a while, it started to weigh on her, and Miss Dollar noticed that, she was looking sad and down in the dumps and this and that. And so Miss Dollar was like, I don't want to hear you saying, no, nothing's wrong, everything's fine. I could tell you're not fine. So sit down and talk to me and let me know what's going on. And so, of course, she was just telling her, I'm really sad because my son is, not spending as much time with me. He's being abused and mistreated and being manipulated and everything like that. And it just don't feel too good. And so I'm worried about him or whatever. And so Miss Dollar was just telling her, I know how it is to feel sad or whatever. And I think she shared with her how her husband committed suicide because this was during the Great Depression. He didn't have no money or no job, but she's filthy rich. And so her husband was a prideful man, so he took his life, and she too felt a little down in the dumps and a little depressed and didn't get herself together all that much while she was being depressed. So she understand how it's hard to get out of a funk sometime, but she said eventually she got out of it. So she was just encouraging Maggie to, let her know it'll be all right. You won't be depressed for so long. And so then she says something kind of, I don't know, she said something sinister like, if you really want to get rid of her, something on the lines of sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get rid of people if you want to protect your son, something on those lines. But anyways, I think that was the beginning of her start having something kind of switch in Maggie's brain a little bit. I don't know. And so this is when the switch happened. So one occasion, her son came home, and he came in, and her son had a eye closed shut, a knot on his head, and he was just beat up. And he came there, of course, because he just wanted to have a little bit of comfort. And they was like, what in the world has happened to you? And he was like, man, Daisy jumped on me because she was mad because I asked her something about who was she with. She was with some guy, and he asked her about it, and she jumped on him or whatever and kind of like beat him up really bad. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, you could just stay here from now on. He was like, no, I'm not here to stay. I just need to stay here for a few hours so she can cool down and calm down, and then I'm going back. And when both Hubert and Maggie heard this, they just were in shock. Like, their mouth was completely wide open that their son had stooped this low to even consider going back to a woman who had just basically beat him to a pulp because she was angry that he questioned who she was with when he saw her with some guy. And so, of course, he didn't like that too much because he's young, dumb, and in love. He was like, I should have never came here. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to leave. And so he storms out and he goes back to Daisy. And so, of course, Maggie inside, when she's, first of all, when you see your son come in the house, be to a pulp. You got a knot on your head, your eyes closed shut, you're battered and bruised. And I know it's back behind a trifling woman that you're dating. Yeah, Maggie was fuming mad, but she tried to hold her composure. Okay? Because here this woman is, who she know is downright disrespectful, who she know is using her son, who she know is manipulating her son and controlling her son and keeping her son away from his family. She just started, she was fuming mad, and she was trying to keep her composure because after all, she just wanted to keep tabs on her son, and she knew that in order to keep tabs on her son, she had to get in Daisy's good graces. And so I think she calls Daisy's house, and so it was surprising that Daisy actually answered the phone the same day when they got in that little spat. And so when she got Daisy on the phone, Daisy was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you called because your son came back. We had like a little fight, but we're okay. I apologized to him and we kissed and made up, and I made him a good meal and everything like that, and it's going to be okay." And the mother inside, she just wanted to scream at her, but she tried to play nice. She just smiled and she was like, "Okay, well, good. You know, I'm not trying to get in any of you guys' business and everything like that." And as I'm reading this, I'm like, wait a minute. She's real good to pretend and hide and smile through this and sound sweet as pie. Like she didn't just see her son be jacked up. But I said, this something is not right, because there ain't no way she just finna sit back and just allow this woman to maul her son like that. Like, I know she's not gonna just sit back and let her do that. So anyways, she just playing it cool. She was like, "Oh, okay, that's okay." She was like, I'm glad that you guys worked it out. I really want you guys to work it out because my son really loves you, and I just want to kind of build a relationship with you because I know he loves you. So I want to get to know you a little bit better. Is there anything that we can do? Can I take you out to eat for lunch or whatever? Or can I come by there or whatnot? And I think she said yes. That'll be fine. That'll be great. And so she hangs up, and she just was disgusted that she had to play nice, but she'll do anything to keep tabs on her son. And so I believe it comes time for her to have this go out to eat with her to get to know her better. But Daisy said something like something else came up and that she wasn't going to be able to do it, but she wanted to ask her for a favor. She wanted to get the money. She said, "Can I have the money instead of you taking me out to eat? Can I have the money because we're behind on the light bill," or something like that, something. And as Maggie is listening to the audacity of this woman asking for money from her, she just was teed off. But again, she was like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, I can give you the money. When can you get it?" Or something like that. And she was like, "Well, you can come by here and give it to me." The audacity of this girl. Daisy said, "You can come by and drop it off or whatever, but you have to come through the back door to drop it off or whatnot. And that'd be great. Like, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Like, you know what? We gonna get along. I got a feeling we gonna get along." Like, the audacity of this Daisy character, I wanted to scream. Like, you just beat this woman's son to a pulp, and then you're talking to her. She was very condescending and very demeaning, just talking to her like, "You're a good little puppy. Like, you ain't so bad. We gonna get along just fine." So Maggie goes over there. She gives her extra. She gives her extra money, more than what she asked for, because she wants to be in good graces with her because her son loves this woman. And so She was like, yeah, I'm sorry. When Maggie took her the money, she was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I ain't gonna be able to go out to eat with you, but thank you for the money. Maybe we can do something else. Maybe we can do something else. And so, Maggie just left and gone about her business or whatnot. And so, fast forward, she finally is able to set a date with Daisy to go pick some berries. Because I guess after Maggie gave Daisy the money, she felt like, I'm going to try to be at least a little bit, nice to her or whatever. After all, if whatever I want, I can pretty much get from her. And she seems like a little good lap dog. So I'm just going to kind of be slightly nice. And so I guess Daisy called Maggie one day, and Maggie was a bit surprised. But anyways, she called her and she said, I need a favor from you. And she was thinking in her mind that, oh gosh, Daisy gonna ask for some money again. But it wasn't money she was asking for. She was like, could you make help me with something? There was a pie that she wanted to make for her son or whatever, something on those lines. But anyways, they set a date to meet to pick some blueberries to make a pie. And so of course, Daisy wanted to know which berry place do she go pick berries, because I think it was two separate locations. And so, of course, Maggie suggested this location that was near the dams and kind of like out the way, and nobody really frequented all that much, which she did go pick berries out there because they're bluer and juicier and more, delicious than that other location. And so she felt like that was going to be a perfect spot. So they set a date and cool. And so she's still trying to be polite to her. And so it comes time to go pick these berries. And so she just left the house and she said, I'm just going to try to keep my composure and be nice to her because, again, I want to get her in a position, because she was about to do something that I did not see coming. So anyways, they was walking and talking, and as they was walking and talking, excuse me, Daisy was being so disrespectful, it just made my mouth open really wide. And Maggie was trying everything within her power to not go off on her before they got to this secluded place. She was just real nice and just kind of like brushing off what she was saying, until things got so bad. She was getting so disrespectful that she just said, look, let's not talk about that right now, because if we're just supposed to be getting along for the sake of my son. And she was like, yeah, you're right, I guess I can do that, because she was just being so disrespectful, like so condescending. For instance, she was like, I'm pretty much a straight shooter, and I'm glad you came to your senses of knowing that I'm the only one that's going to be ordering him around, and I'm the head woman in his life, not you. I'm glad you came to your senses, because I started to worry it was going to be a problem, because I'm the one in his life now. I'm the leading lady. She was just saying this stuff that was just, it was boiling Maggie's blood. And so she was just, when she did that, when she said that, she was like, let's just change the subject, because she had it in her to go ahead and do her plan in plain view sight. But she was like, I can't do that, so let me keep my composure. So honey, they get to the spot where they were going to pick the berries, where nobody could see them or anything like that. And so um Daisy was just so elated, and she was like, oh my goodness, there's so many big blueberries, and ooh, let me just pick these beautiful berries. And she was so busy looking at how beautiful and juicy the berries looked that she hadn't noticed that Maggie, Miss Wiggins, had went over there and opened a spot in this dam or whatever. And then she had picked something up, and she came back behind Daisy and hit her so hard that it opened her skull. Okay, so this girl got hit in the head and really didn't see that coming. She probably didn't even know what happened. Her death just quickly happened because her, like I said, her skull opened up immediately. And then she noticed a rock. Maggie noticed a rock, and she took that rock and hit her so hard on that head. And she was just looking at her, and she was like, when her skull opened up, she said, wow, her brain is really big. It's just too bad she didn't use much of it. And the way that she was acting, she had no remorse, no just sadness, no shock that she had just killed someone, just murdered someone. And after her skull was cracked open, she took her body and just threw it down in a dam. Okay. And she just walking back like nothing had ever happened, like she had no remorse. Now, mind you, Daisy was a piece of work and she was disrespectful, and I couldn't stand her either, but that did not warrant her to kill and murder her. My goodness, like, ain't nothing in this world that serious. But she loved her son. Her son was the only thing that she had. So she was willing to do anything that she could to protect her son, because her son act like he didn't have any good sense. Here he was allowing a woman that he was so madly in love with abuse him. So she felt like he needed an intervention, and she did. So now she's thinking, okay, what can I do to make this look like it's not a murder? I mean, I put her body in a dam. No one will ever find her. So what can I do to make this look like she ran off? So what she did was she went to the house, because on this particular day, she said that she was going to bake a pie for her son and her children, and that they had went out for a long while and they won't be back for hours. So she knew that she was able to go to Daisy's house. And so when she got inside of Daisy's house, of course, she went through the back door, because that's the way that Daisy always told her to come in, is through the back door, to never go through her front door, because she didn't want people bringing in, tracking in dirt and dust and all that in her house. She was a neat freak. So anyways, when she went in through the back door and started looking around in Daisy's place, she was amazed at all the nice things that she had in her house and how clean it was. And she began to get a little bit mad when she was like, and ain't no telling, all the men that she's messed with and manipulated is probably how she got all these nice things. And then I know her son probably spent all of his paycheck to buy most of the things that she had in her house. So anyway, so she decides that she wanted to write a note. Basically, she wrote a note saying, hey, it was like a Dear John letter saying, hey, I am leaving you for another man that's up in New York or something like that. And I'll be back to get the rest of my things and send for my kids and my mother, whatever. Just left a Dear John note. And so she left that there and went home and cooked and was in a great mood or whatever. And Hubert was trying to figure out why she was in such a good mood, and he was just glad to see her not moping around anymore. And so, they having dinner or whatever, and then the phone rings, and she's just sitting there because she probably is figuring like, well, that's definitely him. He didn't got the letter. Of course, they back by now. So, of course, when Hubert answered the phone, he was like, what? What? And then, of course, Maggie had to pretend like, what's going on? And so, of course, Hubert was like, our son told us that Daisy then ran off with another man or whatever, and that he's coming home. And she was like, what? Oh my gosh, I told you that girl wasn't no good. And so anyways, Hubert said he was going to go pick him up. And of course, Maggie is waiting for them to get back, and she has the dinner prepared, and she's just happy because now we're back, one happy family. I got my son back, and he's thinking that she ran off with another man, and so he's fuming, mad and hurt and disappointed. And so he started living with them again, and they're one happy family, and they're so happy. And so of course, the person that she works for, Miss Dollar, noticed that she was in a more, happy, go-lucky type of mood, and she was happy to see that Maggie was smiling and being herself again. And she was like, it's good to know that you're back to yourself. And she was like, yeah, that old floozy that my son was seeing, she ran off with another man. And so now my son is back, and I'm just glad he's back home or whatever. And she was like, that's good. And so Miss Dollar was telling her, well, um, I have a brother who was having some problems with his wife. His wife had ran off and left him to be with another man. And I think the man that her brother name is Mr. Oswald. Well, the woman that he was messing with, she left him for another man, and I think that man ended up murdering her. And then he kind of just went into this little depression. He was just sad, and he never really got over that. So he was doing really bad. But anyways, he was down in the dumps, and he was going to be coming to live with Mrs. Dollar. So she was basically telling Maggie in so many words, he is a piece of work, and he's a drunk, and he has a bad attitude, and he's kind of grumpy and mean, but please don't pay him no mind. And I'm just warning you to just, kind of stay out of his way and just do what he says, because she just knows how he is. And so of course, Maggie, when she's hearing this, she was like, this don't sound like this is going to be a good situation or whatever, because I don't want to be dealing with no guy that's going to make it hard on this job, because she's been working for her for years and she hadn't had any problems. So she didn't want any, but after all, the money was good and the woman was nice. So she was like, okay, well, thanks for telling me, but I won't let it scare me off, and I'll still be here. So anyways, he comes and he is a mess. He is a racist. Like Miss Dollar warned her that he is a little racist and he's a little mean, but he would mind her if she took her in, and if she liked Maggie, maybe he would too. So anyways, he comes, Mr. Oswald, and he's just out his mind. He's a drunk, and he just looked frail and just a skinny old unattractive man. So anyways, of course he was a grouch, just like Miss Dollar told her. And when she met him, she noticed that he was eyeing her, like he was eyeing her up and down or whatever. So she was a little nervous by that, but she met him and then just left out to do her chores and everything like that. And so as time progressed, he just kept coming on to her, and she would try to resist and say, look, I'm working for your sister. It's nothing like that. Like, I'm not that type of person. And he was like, I can't too much tell. The apple don't fall too far from the tree, because your mother was a great prostitute. And she was a little triggered. She was like, my mother turned her life around, and she ended up being a fine young woman, and she made a good name for herself. She no longer did that, and I'm nothing like how she used to be. So don't speak on my dead mother like that or whatever. And he was like, well, your mother, he just kept going on saying, your mother sure knew how to do her job very, very well. And I bet you do too. And he was just coming on to her. And then he started threatening her. He was like, if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to tell her you've been stealing money and you've been mouthing me or whatever, because Miss Dollar had to have one talk with her, because Mr. Oswald had lied and said that she was mouthing him. And so Miss Dollar just politely just said, whatever he says, just try to do it so that there can be peace around here. And so that was already warning number one. And so she didn't want to lose her job, and he was threatening her, like, if you don't give me some or whatever, whenever I want to and do what I say, then I'm going to tell her, and then you can lose your job. Who do you think she going to believe, me or you? And so at this point, he's forcing her to have sex with him. And she thought it was just going to be a one-time thing, but it ended up being numerous times when he wanted to have sex with her. He just kept having sex with her until she just could not take it no more. She couldn't stand him and how he was just violating her every chance she got. just violating her. And she just got tired of the disrespect and she didn't want to do it no more. And there was times when she felt like, well, what if I do tell her? Like, will she really believe me? Like, I don't want to lose my job. How can I do this? And so she made it up in her head, okay, the only way that this is going to work is I'm going to have to use this arsenic that she would use to spray out in Mrs. Um, Dollar's garden. She would use the arsenic out there, but she decided, okay, I'm going to have to poison him. And so she waited until one of the days when Mrs. Dollar had to go out with one of her friends or whatever. And on a day that she knew that Mr. Oswald would be knocked out drunk, because that's what he normally would do. And this was on a day he wasn't expecting her, because on the days he knew she was coming, he was ready to take advantage of her and violate her. So she made sure it was one of the days where she wasn't supposed to come, and she knew that Mrs. Dollar was going to be out. And so sure enough, she snuck into the house in the back door or whatever. And usually Mr. Oswald would be knocked out sleep drunk, but he would always keep a drink near him so that when he woke up he can just chug down his alcohol or whiskey or whatever. He had a particular whiskey that he would drink too, because he didn't drink anything else but this particular type. And so when she goes up there, sure enough, he was snored and knocked out. But she noticed that he had drank all his drink. And so she was looking around the house trying to find, something, the same type of whiskey that he normally would drink. They had other stuff, but he didn't drink that. So she was like, dang, he drank it all. So she had to go to plan B. So since he was already there snoring and he was already reckless, he was a drunk, and then he was talking about suicide sometimes. So she was like, okay, well, I'm going to make this look as natural as possible. So here she goes. She kills victim number 2. She put his head in the pillow and just kind of like just smothered him until he didn't have a heartbeat or breath in his body anymore. And she made sure she did it, and she waited until he was lifeless, and then she left out of there. Now, the fact that this is victim number 2, I'm starting to think like she has no remorse. And I get it, like these people are bad people, just like Daisy. Daisy was not a good person. She was manipulative, she was abusive, and she just took advantage of all types of men, especially her son. So she really wasn't a good person. And then Mr. Oswald, he wasn't a great person either. He was mean, he was a drunk, he was a racist. He wasn't really good, and then he was violating her. So with these people that she killed, yes, they weren't good people, but I don't think that justifies her to murder anyone. All she had to do, with all the years that she's worked for Miss Dollar, all she had to do was go to Miss Dollar and say, hey, your brother is threatening me, he's violating me, and I'm scared. And so I thought I would bring this to your attention. I believe that if she would have done that, Mrs. Dollar would have believed her, because of all the experience that they've had together and the track record that she has and how she thinks of her so highly. She would have believed her, I think. But for some reason in Maggie's head, she just didn't believe that she was going to take her side. She believed that she was going to take her brother's side and that she wasn't going to have a job. So she didn't want to be without a job. So she felt like the only way to get rid of him was to kill him. So she didn't feel bad at all. Like, that's what was scary. I knew that she was going to be a problem when she got her first taste of blood. And the manner in which she just walked about her daily life after killing Daisy, the first victim, it kind of scared me, because she didn't have no remorse. She didn't feel bad or nothing. So I was like, she's going to be a problem, because it was just too easy for her. And so when she got her first taste of blood and then she got the second victim, I was like, yeah, I don't know. Something is not like, wow, hmm, she's a straight up killer. And so, of course, she didn't have to go work for Miss Dollar for a few days, and she didn't want to call her or make a scene or make things too obvious. And so she waited on the day that it was time for her to work, and she goes over there. Of course, you see all these cars and all these family members and different things like that. And sure enough, they're all hooting and hollering and crying and saying how Mr. Oswald just practically died in his sleep. He drunk himself to death or whatever. And she tried to act like she was so sorry. And then she started asking about Mrs. Dowler, like she wanted to see her and speak with her. But the relatives were saying, no, she's not in any good spirits and conditions right now. And I don't think it's a good idea for you to go pay your condolences. Just leave her alone or whatever. And she was like, well, okay, well, I'll come by the next work day to come and do laundry and all of that stuff. And they said, I don't think that's a good idea as well. We'll let you know if and when you can come back or whatever. But they said, I'll go ahead and pay you for those days anyway. I'll stop by your house and pay you for those days. And so she was like, okay, cool. And so sure enough, a couple of days go by and it's a knock on the door, and of course it's Miss Dollar's relatives. And so he, as promised, brought her some money and double that because of the news he was coming to tell her. He was like, basically, I don't think you have to worry about coming back to clean for Miss Dollar anymore. She was like, huh? He was like, yeah, I don't think she didn't take that news too well with her brother, because that's the only person she had left really after her husband died. And she was really close with her younger brother, and so she is not doing too good right now. And then she's up in the age where she needs to be looked after. So this is going to be a permanent deal. You're not going to be working for her no more. We're going to sell her house and everything like that and have her move in with us and take her wherever they was from. And this is the first time she felt kind of sorry and remorseful that, one, she didn't have a job anymore. She just lost her job. And she hurt Miss Dowler. Miss Dowler was a nice person after all. And she always treated her so kindly. So she was sad that she had caused her this heartache and this pain. And so she felt bad, like, dang. And he was like, so if she wants to come by and say goodbye or talk to you or something like that, that'll be on her own terms. But if not, then you know that she didn't really want to, and we're just going to go on with our life. But thank you so much for your services and just have a blessed life. And so at this point, she's really sad because it's like, dang, I didn't expect to lose my job and to lose all this good money. And so Hubert was a little sad by this too, because the funeral business that he was running wasn't really doing too well. A lot of people weren't dying, so money wasn't coming in. And then here she is, lost her good job, making all that good money, and she's without a job. And so now it's beginning to be a little bit hard and it's sad. And she was like, I don't know what we're gonna do for money. And then besides, their son was still staying with them, but then their son had met a nice woman. I think her name was Mabel. He met someone else and she was very, very nice. And the mother was happy for him because she knew that her son had picked a good one this time. She was nice, wholesome, family oriented, was just a good Christian girl and come from a good family. So she was actually happy and kind of encouraging her son to see this Mabel girl. And they met her and she was really nice. And so, of course, you know what comes next. He falls in love with her and they spend more time together. And so, of course, they was going to get married. And I think they go on to get married and she's happy for him. But her and Hubert are going through, they're a little bit more sad, and she's looking for work and looking for work, and trying to find something, but she can never find nothing. And then she's trying to console her friend Jessie. Her friend Jessie was in an abusive relationship with her man, and she would come by Maggie's house with all these black eyes and beat up and coming over there to take a break from all the abuse she's been going through. And Jessie would always say how she don't know what she gonna do. And Maggie didn't want to see her friend in such distress and being beat and mistreated and different things like that. But here you have a woman who didn't really know what she was gonna do. She had a special needs child and she felt like she couldn't do no better. The man that she was with was no good, but at least she had a roof over her head, and she was just scared of him because he would always threaten her if she wanted to leave and different things like that, and would tell her on several occasions, if you leave, I'll kill your mother and you and all y'all. And she was just scared. So she was trapped in an abusive relationship, but Maggie would have to listen to her cry and not knowing what she was going to do. She had to listen to all this for years, and it's like, wow. And so it had gotten so bad where her friend Jessie was missing work, and she couldn't go to work because she had black eyes. And she was just, sick of Orville doing that to her friend Jessie. And so she got tired of it. And so, you know how I say the whole town loves Maggie's gumbo. And she would always make it for the community or whatever. And that's one thing that Orville loved about Maggie, was that gumbo she would make. And so they would always come over there. She would get food and take the food back to Orville, and he would just love that meal that she would make. And so anyways, Maggie was like, well, I'm cooking some gumbo. Do you think that would cheer him up and kind of give him a break from beating on you or whatever? And she was like, yeah, it would. That's good, because I can come by to get it or whatever. And Maggie was like, no, don't bother yourself. I'll come over there and bring you a plate or whatever. And besides, Orville, Jessie's husband, Orville, he had heart problems too. And he would drink and different things like that. So he had heart problems for a long time. So he was already a sickly man. You can't be sickly and abusive. Like, what the heck? So I guess that's why Maggie thought that this is going to be an easy kill as well. So here is her victim number 3. Again, these people that she's murdering, they're not good people, but it doesn't justify her to kill these people. But she will do anything she can for the people that she loved. She feels like this is justifiable because they're not good people anyway. So she goes over there. Of course, she gave Jessie and her special needs son some gumbo, but the gumbo she had for Orville, she put a whole lot of arsenic in that gumbo, that all it took was one bite for him to be out of here. And so anyways, Jessie eye was shut closed when she went in there, and Jessie was like, can you go in there and just take him the gumbo, that bowl of gumbo, because I really don't want to go in there and bother him. I don't want to see him right now. And of course, Maggie, that was right up her alley. She was like, yeah, sure, I want to go do this. And so she went in there and took him that bowl of gumbo, and he had said something smart like, it's about time you bought that gumbo. I've been waiting on that all day or whatever. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry it took so long, but I hope that you enjoy this meal. And he said something under his breath smart, and then she left, honey. So what ended up happening, he took one bite. I think he probably ate all of it or whatever. And he just wasn't acting right. Jessie was noticing that he was just acting really strange and funny, and he was sleeping. Then he woke up and he was vomiting all blood, and he went into a fit, and he just died. And so of course, Jesse ran over there and told Maggie what happened, and she can't believe that he's dead, and she felt really bad and sorry. She was like, I know he mistreated me and treated me bad and all of that, but I didn't want the man dead. And you know when Maggie was seeing her friend crying or whatever, she felt a little bad that she kind of did that, but he was mean, he was a horrible person. So that feeling didn't last too long. And then, in a sense, when they had the funeral for Orville, Jesse was a little bit relieved that she didn't have to get beat no more, be abused no more, have to worry about nothing no more. And so she got relief. Let me just say that she got relief, and she started buying stuff for her and her son and getting the groove of things again. And I think she started to try to date again, but I was happy that she didn't have to worry about that abuse anymore. But I did not, once again, think that it was justified for her to kill her third victim. It's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, so this woman, Maggie, is turning into a stone cold killer. And so now also in the neighborhood, there is a very grumpy, kind of like crazy old man that stays across from them. And oftentimes, like if his neighbors were too loud or playing their music too loud or just anything, he would shoot his shotgun at people and chase people with his cane. He just was a horrible nuisance of a neighbor that he got on everybody's nerve. Like he really did. And one night, that old man, what was his name? What was that man's name? I forget that man's name, but the neighbor across the street, he took out a gun one day while Maggie was on the porch just to get some fresh air, because like I said, her and Hubert were just going through, their finances wasn't really picking up and different things like that. And he was complaining how, because it was like two black owned funeral businesses in town, and the other funeral place was getting a lot of bodies, but Hubert was getting less and less bodies. And like I said, she wasn't working and business wasn't really going good. And so Maggie was just trying to encourage him that things will pick up. There's a lot of older people who will die soon, and of course he was discouraged because he was like, I can't too much tell because, people aren't dying as much anymore. And if they did die, they're going to the other black owned business. So, so I knew then when he was saying that, and how that next door, the neighbor across the street was acting, how the neighbor pulled a gun out on them and different things like that. I knew that that was going to be her next victim, because okay, work is slow, so this will be another body. And of course they'll give a hefty amount of money towards this funeral or whatnot, so that will be some money and that'll pick up. And then he pulled a gun out on me. That scared her. And so and so of course the neighbor, when she found out her husband had pulled a gun out on her, she came across there. She was like, I want to apologize that my husband pulled that gun out on you and different things like that. And of course, Maggie was like, it's no problem. He ain't been right for a long time. I don't pay him no mind. And so she was like, well, he's getting ready to have a birthday. Maybe that will perk him up. And could you cook him that gumbo and come over and bring some dishes, because I'm asking everybody that's coming to this party for his birthday to bring some dishes or whatever. And then she was like, yeah, that's fine, I'll do that or whatnot. And so she was like, good, thank you so much for agreeing to come even after he pulled that gun out on you. So she leaves, and of course now she's having mixed feelings. She was like, yeah, he did pull a gun out on me. I don't really know. She was telling Hubert that. And he was like, well, if you change your mind, just let me know. But I think it'll be a great idea for us to get together. And besides, there's so many people there, he won't even mess with nobody probably. And she was like, yeah, that is true. So she agreed. And so once again, she made sure that she put a whole lot of arsenic in his gumbo. And sure enough, when he ate, well, he had been drinking really heavy that day because, again, it was his birthday. And so they just thought that he had drunk too much and caused him to have a heart attack or whatnot. So after he ate the special gumbo that she had poisoned, he too was vomiting up blood and had a fit and died. And so once again, she doesn't feel bad about killing her fourth victim because he had pulled a gun out on her and he was just terrorizing the whole neighborhood or whatnot. And so they have a funeral for him, and of course now the town is nice and silent and really, really good or whatever. And so life is looking good because now her husband has service picked up because he had made funeral arrangement for the neighbors across the street. And then business started picking up. Like they started doing good again, and she actually got another job. Now she wasn't getting paid as much as she used to get paid with Mrs. Dollar, and she hadn't heard back from Miss Dollar ever since Miss Dollar left, and she kind of missed her, the conversations and the story that Miss Dollar used to share with her, and she just really missed her. But she was working for this new lady. She was a little bit younger, a whole lot younger than Mrs. Dollar. Actually, she was about possibly 2 years older than Maggie. And Maggie, at this point, she's in her 40s or whatever. So, yeah, she's working for someone that's practically her age. And so they're doing good again. They're having the money. And then her son, she's happy for her son because he's with a fine young lady. And they're just, everybody's doing good. And so until like she noticed that Hubert wasn't himself, like he wasn't going out as much, and when he did go out, he would come home and act really, really sad and depressed, and to the point where she had no choice but to sit down and talk to him and see what was going on with him. And so he was just basically saying, you know, I can't do this anymore. I can't be married anymore because I'm living a lie. The person that I'm with, I'm just ready to tell everything because he's willing to risk and tell his wife that he's gay and he no longer can be in that marriage anymore. And I'm tired of living like this myself. I feel like I'm just trapped and I just can't live this lie no more. I've been doing this for years. And of course, Maggie could not believe this news because they had made an agreement that they were just going to keep their little secret, put on this facade and look like this happy couple. And a lot of things was running through her head, like what would the town think of her, that she actually went along with this plan to be with a knowingly gay man and to scout out men who look like her gay husband so that they can make it appear like they had this intimate life and that they both had created this child. It's just a lot of things going through her head. And then she actually cared for this man. Like they had a life together. She was used to this man coming home, they being up under one roof, she cooking for this man. Yes, she loved him in like a brotherly way. It was nothing romantic, but still she invested a whole lot of her life into this man, you know? And he just basically told her, yeah, I just can't do this no more. I'm getting a divorce and I don't care anymore. I'm not living a lie no more. I'm going to tell my parents. I'm going to tell my job. And I already made arrangements with people that I've already been training. They can take over the business. You can keep the house. And I'm just going to tell our son the truth about who his real father is. And at this point, she's feeling like, because the way that Hubert just came out with this and said this, it was kind of cold-hearted and a little bit selfish. And I don't think that he was thinking about everybody involved with the manner in which he went about it. It was like, dang, you know, y'all went this many years, like for 20 plus years, putting on this facade? Like, why can't you put it up any longer? Like, you could have brought your lover in the house and pretend like that was her side of the family, but she could have said that that was a cousin and that they could try to make this work the best they knew how without him doing something so drastic by leaving her just high and dry by herself. She didn't have her son no more. Well, she had him, but he was going to come by every now and then. He had his own wife and probably going to have kids someday. So she was going to be left alone in this house that they had built together. But he promised that he would still be friends with her, and he was just telling her how she needs to move on and get over this, and, you know, to try to pick up the pieces and live her own life now, because he was not going to live a lie anymore. And I felt really sad for her in that moment. I felt really sorry for her, because it's like she didn't know anything else. She didn't have anything else. That's all she knew, was to put on this facade and look like this perfect couple to everyone. And people will always say how they had such an amazing life, such an amazing marriage, and how Hubert was a great man and all this and that. And just to have that crumbling down, I felt really sorry for her, because she did not know, honestly, nothing else but him and her son Claude. And so this about to be victim number 5, which I didn't think that she would do anything like that, because he still, after all, was saying that he was going to be there for her as a friend, because they've always been friends. But when she got to thinking about how this was going to hurt Claude, and he possibly could be mad at her because she went along with this plan, she just couldn't bear him getting hurt back behind this. So once again, she's going to the extreme for her son. And she decided, she didn't do it right away. She was like, okay, well, darn. She was trying to get her head around this news, trying to gather her thoughts back behind this drastic news. And so she was trying to get over it, but she just couldn't. She just couldn't let this man do it. And actually, she knew he was going to do it, because his boyfriend went and told his wife, and Maggie was asking, how did your boyfriend's wife take all the news? And of course he was like, yeah, his wife was sad, his kids didn't want to speak to him no more, so he risked it all for me, so I'm going to do the same. And it was the day that he was going to tell his parents and everybody what had happened. It was on that particular day, and she decided that she wanted to cook gumbo. And he was supposed to have dinner with her another day, but he couldn't do it. He never came. So, but he promised her, like, on Saturday, when he was going to come that way anyway, because he was going to tell his parents that he was going to promise to stop by there to have dinner with her one last time. And so she was like, cool. So she didn't want to be there for it, because she couldn't bear him saying goodbye and them having their last meal. So she set aside his poison bowl, put it in the refrigerator, and told him that it basically is going to be waiting in the refrigerator for you or whatnot, so you could just go in and eat it. And then she had already told him, I'm not going with you to your parents' place to tell them, because he asked her to come with him to, just be there to tell her side as well. But she didn't want to do that, so she told him he could do that on his own. And so he was like, cool. And so she goes out for hours, thinking that, while she's out for hours, she'll come back to him consuming that gumbo that was poison, and he'd be dead by the time she get there, and then she can act like she don't know what happened to him. And so anyways, she was out for hours, and she comes back, and of course, sure enough, she see her friend Jessie come running towards her, and she tried to play it cool. She was like, what's going on with you? What's wrong? And she was like, there's something bad going on in your house or whatever. And she was like, what is it? And she was like, it's Hubert. And she was like, what about Hubert? She's like, yeah, we had to take them to the hospital and whatever, and he's back or whatever. She was like, wait a minute, huh? How is they took him to the hospital but he's back? Like, what's going on? So anyway, she went in there, and to her surprise, she's surprised that she sees Hubert in there bawling and sobbing and crying. And she was like, in her head, like, he's supposed to be good and dead, but he's not dead. Like, what in the world is going on? And so anyway, everybody's crying, and then Hubert was looking at her, and he was like, our son is dead, Clyde is dead. And at this point, she lost it, because she did not want to hear those words. The bowl was not for her son Claude, but it was for Hubert. And Claude loves her gumbo too. And Claude and Hubert like their gumbo the same way. So she made sure she made the gumbo to their liking. But she was like, well, what happened? I don't understand. Like, what do you mean Claude is dead? Like, what? And he was like, well, I stopped by here to have the gumbo, but then Claude was here, and so I know how much he liked your gumbo, and since it was going to be our last meal, I let him have it, and to have, you know, some last moments with my son before I was to tell him the truth. But once he was sitting there with the son, he just couldn't tell him what was going on, and he wasn't going to tell nobody about his truth anymore, because he just realized, he had an epiphany that it just wasn't worth it. He had an epiphany. He had a change of heart, and she was just shocked listening to this. And so he was like, after he had the gumbo, he started vomiting blood, and he had a fit, and we tried to rush him to the hospital. But about time he went to the hospital, he was dead. Now I was like, oh my gosh, this is your 5th victim. But it's not the victim that you wanted. Now you did all of this, and now everything that you did caught up to you, and you lost the very thing that you loved the most, your son. Back behind trying to kill someone else, you lose your son, and it's at your hands. So I knew that she wasn't going to be able to live and go on without her son, because she loved her son. Her son was all she had, and she really, that was the only thing that she really loved above anyone or anything. And I knew once he was dead, that was going to be it. Because sure enough, that night she said she had a dream. Like, Claude came to her in a dream. She couldn't see much because there was a lot of darkness around him. But she said in the dream that she could see him smiling with his hands out. And so when she woke up from that dream, she was like, basically that was her cue or a sign that he wanted her to come join him. And so what she did was hop downstairs, got her a bowl of gumbo, and finished and put all of the arsenic that was left in there, enough to kill 5 people. And she took the bottle of empty arsenic and hid it somewhere in the trash can where nobody would know. And so she put it all in her bowl, and she finished. She didn't even heat up the gumbo. She just ate it cold. And sure enough, she ate it up, and she started vomiting up blood. And she wanted to die in the same spot her son died in. As she was vomiting, she went to the couch and just laid there, and she died in the same spot that her son died, and that was it. Her life was over. When I read that, I was so shocked. I did not see that coming at all. And I felt sorry for her, because now Randolph, Claude's actual father, biological father, that was a man who she could have made a life with, because he was genuinely in love with her. And actually, There was one night when Claude and Hubert and Claude's girlfriend Mabel all went to this restaurant on another side of town, which is Mobile. She actually ran into Randolph when she, had to go use the restroom. And when she went to go use the restroom, she spotted Randolph, and Randolph remembered her. And she was just sitting there trying to deny him, saying, "No, I don't remember you," or whatever. "I don't remember you. Like, get away from me." And he was like, "Yeah, you remember. You remember me. And I know for sure I remember you. Your voice is still the same. You still look good. How are you?" And she just kept pushing him away. And then he got the MO. He was like, "Oh, I take it you're here with someone and you're married." He was like, "Well, I tell you what, if ever you need, I'm still living in the same house where you met me, and I'll be waiting for you." And she felt a little bad, but not really, because she didn't want her cover blown, because she could possibly lose her son Clyde back behind this, knowing that Hubert is not really his father, and indeed this man is. So she just had to deny him. But she had a conversation with Hubert one time, saying that she saw him, and of course Hubert was a little mad because their cover could be blown. What if Claude finds out that I'm not his real dad? So they was just, when you tell one lie, you have to tell many more to keep up a lie. So I felt like that could have been the one for her, but she pushed him away. And it was at her expense that she stayed with this person who was just only a friend to her. She never had sex for years. The sex with Randolph was at least decent, and she was actually starting to like him and having sex with him the more she was doing that, because she started seeing him for a while but then cut it off. So I feel like she could have had someone in her life who actually loved her. I wish she would have had her own thing going on with Randolph, at least, instead of being devoted to a man who never loved her in that way and never thought of her in that way, and they was just a cover for each other. And then with Hubert, I didn't like Hubert because he was so selfish the whole way through. Yes, he was upfront with her on why they was going to get married and everything like that, but I felt like in the end, why invest all these years trying to put on this facade? You've done it already for years in y'all teens, 20s, 30s, and you waiting until later in life in y'all 40s, and you feel like you can't do it no more. It's like you went this far, you might as well go the extra mile, go all the way. You know what I mean? There was ways you could have worked around this. I feel like he was selfish, very selfish. Very much so, the whole entire time. Even with him being tired and not wanting to live a lie anymore, he was selfish even in that, because he didn't take time to think about everybody involved and everyone who was going to be hurt or damaged back behind his lies. And at least, like, he should have felt like, okay, I've been selfish. Let me for once in my life, be selfless and just go ahead and just ride this thing out. Still see my men on the side, so I won't hurt my son, who's really not my son. So I won't hurt my parents. They're old. I don't want them going to their grave knowing that this was a lie. I don't want to hurt the community, my reputation. He didn't take time to think about nothing, Nathan. And he just was so selfish. Selfish. Yes, he was honest, but it didn't warrant him to be so selfish. You would think that, okay, after all these years, she kind of like put up this front for me when she could have. She's an attractive woman. Maggie could have went on and had something for herself and go on to be with a man or whatever and live her life, but she devoted most of her life to live this life for me. And the extent that she was going for me, let me for once, okay, I've learned how to love. I've learned how to consider other people through this experience. And so let me just be selfless for once in my life and just consider everybody involved and realize that it's not worth hurting everybody, because everybody was going to be hurt. I felt bad for her I just felt so sorry for her, and it's just a shame that she took her own life and her son was dead back behind her hands. This book was crazy. A lot of the things in here I did not see coming. I can't believe that she just went on to be this murderer. Like, it really shocked me. I think she was a sane person. I'm not going to say that she's insane. I think that she got a taste of blood and she felt as if she was justified to kill these people because, again, the people that she killed, except for what she thought was going to be her husband and her son, they didn't deserve it. But all the other people, they were bad people. So that's why I felt like she was doing a service in her mind. She was doing a service to the world by eliminating these negative, bad energy people. And she didn't feel bad about it. That's what was so scary. Nothing warrants someone being murdered, you know? And I feel like some of the things she could have avoided and she could have took another route, but she didn't. This book was very dysfunctional, very, very good. This book came out in 2021, but I just read it and I just can't believe it. If you read Mrs. Wiggins, comment below. What did you think of the book? Did you expect some of the things that happened? Let me know. But this book, I just shook my head and I felt a little sorry for her in the end. In the end, I just felt so sorry for her. And I feel like the love she had for her son was a little bit it was just a little bit dysfunctional, a little bit unhealthy. It was just too much. It was just unhealthy. It was not, I don't know, it was just different. You can love your children, but not like that. That was just dysfunctional. Dysfunctional, unhealthy type of love. It just was not a good look. And she loved and idolized her son so much. It just was just unhealthy, unnatural. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to this book review. Until the next time, you guys enjoy. Bye-bye.